we are. We should be live here on Real Fridays on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. If it's Friday, it's Real Fridays. Every Friday at 12:30, we talk about housing-related items, housing, mortgage, and real estate from an insider markets perspective. I'm Rick Rock, one of the founding partners of the show, along with Brock Cassidy, a leading real tech innovation expert running a great company called NewsZip, and Jeremy Potter, who's not here, but he may be joining later, but likely not. A leading lawyer and really strategist. You know, he's kind of been all over the map on title tech and correspondent and retail lending and wholesale.
It's being introduced as a lawyer by training. Strategist seems to be what he does these days. Yeah.
Oh, he's excellent. I love the dude. I think that sometimes being talented like that is you end up being so spread out in so many different directions. But he's such a talented guy. But we have a much more talented guy on the podcast today, Michael Kelleher.
Absolutely.
And so we're just glad to have him by.
Guest.
Well, dude, I love your content. I love your post today. Actually, I thought that was a really, really good post. How do you I'd love to understand your content. Like, how do you come up with your content ideas? Because every day you're hitting it out of the park with some really, really content rich, insightful sort of posts. Is it just research you do in a weekend and you just pound out and you schedule out a 5 or 7 day protocol, or how are you?
Even before we get to that, Mike, like give us the layout of what your I know you have the consulting business, the show.
Oh, that's right.
Like give us the layout of how it all fits together.
Sure. So I am part of Adopt the Brand, which I always say was originally made to bridge what I did with Easy Mortgage Apps, which is a lot of software vendors have trouble with adoption, especially in distributed retail, as they're trying to get more loan officers to use it. And I've always said, I think the voice needs, from my experience with Easy Mortgage Apps, the voice should come from the outside. Like you as a vendor, it's almost like no news is supposed to be bad news, but sometimes no news is good news. Because if people are using the program more, there's more like bugs are going to pop up. So it's like, and then do you really want to start that, or do you want to just keep it going? And so I always felt like an outsider would be good to sort of help both sides realize the relationship's going really strong, but you need to use it more, but then more things are going to come up. But how do we do that? But it ended up being just opening doors, which I'm really good at, for vendors, and different vendors will come to me and ask if they can have me open up doors with them. I turn away as many as I turn away a lot because they already have a salesperson. They don't really need me. They're just hoping for luck. But then there's a couple that have been really good. I'll just give a shout out to Sapiens Decisioning has been a client of mine. They are in the decisioning layer space, and I do believe it's like a client like that helps me think. And I've been on so many meetings and I say, geez, they don't have a decision layer plan. This makes so much sense. Larger banks are doing it. And what's cool is like they hired me as a way to show they're entering like downstream into the IMB community bank. Like when they present it, they actually say Mike Kelleher was part of our, as proof of our strategy versus just, we got Mike Kelleher to sell more. So I have been able to group decisioning in. I'm a fundamental believer in it. And the other one is Silverworks Solutions. I do believe it is growing among the IMB, especially distributed retail, more than any other vendor without everybody just knowing about it. And it's pretty fascinating to see. That is persona-based bots. I don't write as much about that because I think that one is one you really need to get a referral from some other lender in the industry to really understand it. But I do find it fascinating, the study of how much of a job can you replace to truly eliminate that job. And that's been the biggest problem with the mortgage industry. Everything improves 20-30% output of a individual. That is not enough for a COO or CFO to really eliminate the position. And that's why everybody complains about the obvious, which is we have the same amount of people now, and they blame the SaaS rather than the people. Now we have all this SaaS The problem is it didn't lift enough that you thought to replace a person. And so, yeah, it's going to keep stacking on. And then finally, I'll say I'm now an author, and I should be plugging this everywhere. So the book is called Mortgage Manager Mastery. Pat Sherlock did a wonderful job of getting different people in the industry to give a playbook really for just your branch manager or that wants to become a little bit bigger, or a regional manager that wants to run a couple other branches, but maybe not start their entire own mortgage company. And she did a really good job, I think, of starting with the chapters first of how to break it down, and found people to fill the position. And I more talk about the future branch, which we could get into later here, the future branches of mortgage and what they look like. So that's what I do. And then when I'm not serving an adopt the brand client, I'm starting to really just focus on before locking the loan, and how can I bring service to lenders in that area. And I've started to work with some lenders there. I think everything from lock to close, I make introductions, but there's so many smart people there. The mortgage industry loves playing there. That's not where I spend my free time anymore. That's where I spend most of my work time. I think before you lock and after it closes is where I'm more fascinated with, and where I talk to you guys all the time about. So that's my background. Thank you for asking. People do always wonder. I should, as good as I am at posting and branding, thought leader, I'm really bad at actually.
And so I mean, I have some idea because we're friends and I spend a lot of time with you. But for anyone, you have a whole lot of LinkedIn following, so maybe everyone listening already is super familiar. But if anyone isn't, how do you fit together the like LinkedIn, the podcast that you've been running for 2 years, maybe more now, the LinkedIn posting? Like, how is that all a flywheel for the consulting business, or the opposite, or the consulting business informs the content, or how do you think about that?
I almost think it's a flywheel for my end game, which is if I can amplify the voice large enough, when the right idea comes, which will either be in data or in BIPs, somebody will come and let me be the first one to roll it out. And it would have worked anyway without me, but with me, it'll work a lot louder and faster. I think what I do is something I'm teaching pre-lock to lenders now, and saying, like, you guys all need a podcast. And I think I can give you the playbook just out of passion, like not as somebody trying to make a buck off you, but this is really what you need to do. So I think it's taught me a lot, and the guests are the driver behind. I mean, I can answer Rick's question later about the post, but the podcast for me is just all about the guests. And for me, it doesn't matter how many people watch it, even though it is well watched. It's, did I get the right guest that week? Did we learn from that guest? And that's what I pitch to other people is start with the guest and then work your way back to the vanity metrics. But you guys have great guests. I mean, I think.
Well, the way you structured your show was kind of an inspiration for me, by having more guests and kind of leveraging our contacts and our network of contacts. And because otherwise the genesis of our show was really around, what does Rick Rock, what does Brock Cassidy, what does Jeremy Potter think about the mortgage industry? Because people, we all get a lot of phone calls from investment bankers, from vendors, from other lenders saying, hey, like, what are you seeing out there? So it's like, so let's create a show centered on us and our thoughts. Your show, I like it a lot because it was less focused on what you guys think and is much more around how you could extract the thoughts of others and of your guests, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I went to Jeremy and Brock and said, hey guys, we should really tap into our local network of people. But also I think we should not have any limits on this. Like, and I say that, I remember when I was managing editor of the Niche Report, if you guys remember that publication, it was a mortgage and real estate publication back in like 2011, 12, 13, 14. It was the nation's largest publication for mortgage at the time, printed and then mailed to people's homes. And we were trying to always, the big push was like getting cover stories. How do you get like a really catchy cover story? So we got Josh Altman when he had first started on the Millionaire Listing. We got the really flamboyant guy out of New York. I forget his name.
Sherhan.
No. He's like Swedish, like 6'5", really good looking guy, and he like dominates like New York, like high end real estate, right? He was also on Millionaire Listing. Frederick Eklund.
Yeah.
So we interviewed him and we had him on the cover. And then I pestered Donald Trump's office because Trump had a mortgage. Of course, he's in real estate and everything else. And, for 15 years prior, he always floated this idea of running for president. And so we asked him to be on the cover and to interview him. And he declined us for about 6 months, his office did. And finally, I actually sent his office manager a Vermont gift basket. It was in August. I think it was in September. It was a Vermont gift basket of like Vermont maple syrup, pancake mix, all these different things. And so she finally called me. This was after 6 months of her saying no. She finally called me and said, you have 30 minutes, October like 15th, in New York City in the office. You either are here or you're not, but this is the date, And so I went to New York and I interviewed Donald Trump, and then we had the whole transcript of it. We printed it. But part of what I loved about it was like, there was no kind of like ceiling to who we should ask, like to be on the show, to interview. And I'd love to kind of apply the same concept to our shows. Like we should have Pulte on the show. We should have, the founder of Airbnb on the show to talk about what he did and how he's disrupting housing. There should be nobody that should not want to talk to us because of our positions of leadership in mortgage and housing. It's just sometimes we think small, too small. And small meaning like who we already know.
Yeah, Mike. What more can you ask for? Yeah.
Well, no, I know, right? But
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean, we should be asking, like, that was one of the.
We did have a really cool episode. What was that, like 6 or 8 weeks ago? We had Austin Allison on, who was
founder of Picasso.
Yeah, he sold a $300-400 million business to Zillow when he was 27 or something, and now he started another $1 billion company in the real estate space, Picasso. Picasso. So that's been really cool to have someone like that. But it is a trade-off. Like if you bring on someone like that, like the other half of our show is we're trying to give the like what's the latest in mortgage. So we try to kind of alternate it. And I think you approach yours a little bit differently, Mike. But yeah, I agree, Rick. Like adding the guest component's been really cool and something we should keep tapping into. People that very few people have access to between all of us. One of us may, and so it's been fun to see.
What's funny is Jeremy doesn't like that. Jeremy doesn't like doing the guests. He's made that comment a few times, and it's like, Jeremy, it's.
Well, Jeremy and I thought of it a little bit differently than you, Rick. Our thought for this show was we're talking about what's going on in the mortgage industry anyway. Why don't we just record it? And we were thinking like, let's make it like a real world conversation. Like a lot of, you see a lot of that in like Silicon Valley or whatever, where people like literally just record the calls they're already having and turn it into content. So we were thinking of it more as like a double dip show on like what are you working on today, Brock? Oh, let's talk about it.
That's right.
And so anyway, the right answer is a middle ground, and that's what we have, but it's been fun to try different things.
Yeah, I will say, getting publicly traded company people on there as a precedent has been one of the pieces I've seen almost as required. So when you forget some of these, are publicly traded, but you just say, like when we had Deb Jones at Citizens Bank, right? Like Citizens Bank, anything she says can technically be looked at by, because the Monty Fool's always watching my show. So, if she says something that tips them off and then it ends up in Yahoo Finance, so they're very careful. If they're publicly traded, I promise them the questions ahead of time. If they're not publicly traded, I give them the option if they have a company that is that big. And then I just give them all the people. I think our first big publicly traded person was John Tuig from Raymond James. And that like Stan showed me, like two things are possible. Yes, like there is no limit to who I can get because the interaction with them was no different. It wasn't like that Trump experience where they like, you got 30 minutes and go. It was still, you knew to stop on time out of respect, but it was still like anybody else. And I think they just need precedences. So you just got to work your way up and like get people that are similar, show them that. But like you said, Brock, for me, and I'm sure loan officers could learn from this or anybody, like we had James Heck on our show, and by the end, we have a bond and rapport that is great. And I could show you over the last 4 years, the one message every 60 days, randomly, I have sent him with no response. And now if I reach out, he will respond. So that could be a loan officer that has trouble and all of a sudden like almost builds a friendship over the real estate agent. You just got to follow up on it in some point and keep it going and try and avoid turning it into a sale. Especially, but I think that sort of what you're hinting at the beginning. It can be such a big tool in your outbound relationship building, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. And so it makes perfect sense, dovetailing back to what you're working on, building Adopt a Brand and introducing new products or innovative products. So then I kind of sidetracked us from Rick's initial question of like, you've built this big LinkedIn niche and following and really
you're nearing the 2 million club, Mike. So looking forward to having you a part of that. What's humbling is when you compare you have amazing numbers. Touching 1.4 million, 1.5 people is incredible the last 12 months. And I remember sort of when I broke 2 million, me kind of going to Greg Share, like, hey, I broke 2 million. And of course he touches about 5 million people a year. And then Greg was bragging about his 5 million to Renee Rodriguez, and Renee Rodriguez touches about 5 million people a week with his content. Wow. So it's just insane. It's so the ladder there's no ceiling to that either, but just as soon as you feel like you've accomplished something, you touch people who really are in a totally new realm of influence.
Yeah. And I think for you, Rick, myself, anybody, LinkedIn makes it where, unlike Renee, because he's in other fields now, this is a larger percentage of the TAM of if you're trying to reach executives, right? And so that's where. Yeah,
I'd love to see that cut of like how many mortgage executives from how many of the top 500 companies or 100 companies follow, like probably 100% almost follow you. Yeah.
Since I've been writing, I've picked up a large amount of analytical positions like CIOs, CTOs, banks. Like
I've seen your content sent around within mortgage partners of mine that are like, oh, this is, this guy, Mike, he did this analysis on something. I'm like, yep. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So the way I schedule them all out. So they're usually all written at least a week, 2 weeks, somewhere, I would say about 10 days in 10-day spurts. And if it's something relevant, day 1 and day 2, like the Citus AMC is part of my next batch. That went first because it's relevant right now. Like it just happened. I may or may not. And then sometimes I write them and decide whether or not to put them out. Like I have one on the UWM ESPN article. I will read it again and decide if I really want to deal with all the heat that comes with some of it. But yeah, I think I just try to find where I started was I had that advisor that worked a lot with ICE and would allow me to see, where the world was going. And I think that's, we can put a link to your last show. And I talked a lot about that. And nothing has changed. That's a 12-year plan. Nothing's going to change overnight there. He has since passed away, unfortunately. So you don't see as much Nostradamus from me because I was actually saying things that were going to happen. And then I just gone back and looked at what has worked. I mean, that's the one thing LinkedIn's good at. I have a problem with a lot of things they're not good at. But for example, if you run a podcast, it's tough to post twice a day. So I always post between 7 and 9 a.m., try to pick a different time on the scheduler. And I would love to not post the rest of the day for numbers, but for personal reasons, I have the show. You can't put a show on LinkedIn without posting, which is, I have all these pictures that I take from conferences. I really need to start getting those out. So I don't know if I just start releasing them at midnight. I don't know where, and then I look back at the data, and the CFPB has done really well for me. Zillow, Rocket, Mr. Cooper, If you look at the
You're
financials,
saying like analyses of those topics.
yeah,
Like, yeah, post on those news about those companies or analysis of those companies. Yeah.
Yeah, they do 20, 40,000. They even did like 7,000 during the weird summer where it was obviously fixing its algorithm. And then the other stuff just is consistent, 5,000, 6,000 here and there that are more, that are like the 265 clicks. That was actually one of my Rocket 265 click recently, was one of my largest outside of when I first got out of the gates in the beginning of the year. So largest in a while. I think it's over 55,000 impressions and people are still clicking it. So some just go really, so when they go well, I try to find different things. So like Open Door, you're going to see a couple of posts from me from Open Door to see if that fits in that Zillow world. If you look at investor, you ask where I look, I go deep thought on ChatGPT around a thought I have. And
I like how you data mine X and how you look at like, like hot topics that are circulating around X and you start researching, that as well. Cause I think that puts the finger on the pulse. I mean, people, if people are talking about an X, then, it'll you have a leg up on what potentially could be viral because you're already touching, you're just reflecting that same pulse on LinkedIn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the arbitrage of spice. Like there's so much spicy stuff on X, and the fact that our industry is rarely on it. If I just bring it to LinkedIn, I don't have to re-engineer much. It's a lot of speculation and gumshoe type, usually from investors, right? Trying to piece together different pieces of the pie, but people like it, and our industry, and nothing I say is not factual. So I think that's why people like it. But by the way, I'm not a media company. So
I was going to say, like, is the way to think about that just top of funnel, getting people to see your name a couple times? Like, you don't necessarily get anything other than some views out of breaking a story about what Rocket might say at their next investment meeting, right? For example, or do you, does it drive real business to do that? Like, how do you think about it? Is that like a top of funnel and then that brings people into your world to see everything else? Or like,
yeah, like it's supposed to be an eyeball. It's supposed to get more opportunities of better, like a Sapiens Decision, a Silverworks Solutions. Mm-hmm. That's typically a top 100 lender play you're looking at. Mm-hmm. Trying to get into a conversation with them when they want to have that conversation about something forward thinking and say, look, this is something you should be looking at. As far as I am not a media company, so I don't want to be viewed as somebody that's just like, I want it to be okay that I'm wrong once in a while, making a guess. Like, I don't want somebody to hold me to the fire. And so I don't take any media type accolades when in fact, I just kind of told people on Thanksgiving how many impressions I have. I don't even try to get that out there because I don't really want that feedback so that I can be myself. And that's the whole thing with Adopt the Brand. Every time I get a job with somebody, they love me for all these impressions, but the first thing they try to do is like then control them and kind of, you can't be having those thoughts out there.
Right.
The media cycle's so fast though. Like I've had very little, if anything's stayed with me longer than 8 days. Like people get over it quick. They forget the next news cycle. But yeah, people say all the time sources. And there are some like I've heard, I don't have the source. Like the adoption of a servicing app, heard directly from a large credit card company. So I say that, but like I couldn't really source it.
Yeah. So I look at it a little differently in the sense of, and I agree with you, Mike, and I think these words might help frame it a little better in that I think we have platforms where we articulate things that people are talking about regardless. Mm-hmm. Like if someone's talking that Loan Depot is going to buy this company or what have you, we're not reporting that. I think what we're doing is reflecting the fact that this conversation is happening and it's happening below surface. It's happening amidst the water cooler talk or at the conferences and that kind of thing. And we're just reflecting that conversation. Now they might come out and say, absolutely not. We're not going to buy that company. Quit spreading rumors. It's like, wait, time out. We're not spreading a rumor. We're actually just reflecting what's already being discussed in the marketplace, and we're giving you an opportunity in a very public forum. We're actually being honest about it. We're actually just being, reflecting what the true conversation is being had. And if people want to either correct it, guide it, align it, or deny it, that's sort of up for them to do. But I don't think that there's any editorial, unless we're making up stories. That's different. If there are, which I don't, none of us do. But my view is, and there's been so many cases in this, already where like when Greg talked about the Loan Depot acquisition by Zillow, it's like everyone was talking about it. So it's kind of like, well, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's see if there's any legs to it. What else is everyone hearing? Has other people heard it? And then, of course, both parties were forced to kind of come to the surface to say, this is not true. This is not what's happening, which is great because that provides clarity to the conversation in the industry that's being conducted. I don't think he was trying to spread rumors. He just was trying to mirror and reflect the conversation that was currently being had.
Yeah, I think the sports is my analogy, right? Like sports radio can all the time speculate a trade that never goes through, and nobody gets in trouble for saying the trade that never happened, the free agent that never happened. And I think our industry is the closest thing in business to the sports world, whether we want to admit it or not. It's very competitive. People know about each other way more than you think. They look at stats of each other. They know name brands. They track name brands. It's a big industry, and I guess I'm no bit different than just a sports opinion that is just saying what the voices and other people are saying, or talking about some stat that I see is going on. The difference is I'm having more CEO meetings, I think, than anybody. They're not like one-on-one interviews, but between my one-on-one interviews every week on my podcast and the 16, talking about it, I do have an idea of what's happening. And if you read my stuff, I try not to get that granular. It's usually something bigger.
I do agree with this one anonymous LinkedIn user comment saying, Mike, I think the definition of media company has changed. I'd consider you part of new media. I do agree with that, but I do think that the obligations of media and the different media types matter, right? And I think that what we're doing is not investigative journalism per se. I mean, there might be obviously there's a lot of research behind it, but it's not. I don't think people who are talking and having conversations at the bar, like it depends how big your media is. If I'm having a conversation at a bar at a conference in front of 25 people, that's my platform. If I'm having the same conversation to another platform of 150 people because I'm on stage at a conference, that's a separate platform. But I would say the obligations are almost the same. We're just speaking based on our own experience and expertise and our own relationships. If all of a sudden we're speaking on a different platform across 50,000 or a million, I think to some degree it's the same, right? We're speaking on our experience, what our thoughts are, from our own critical analysis, and then maybe some research that we have to try to validate what we think to be true, but we're not necessarily trying to Tom Brokaw this moment. We're not necessarily being looked to as the arbiters of the only truth. I think we're just giving kind of a sliver of it as we see it.
Yeah, I keep saying I think, but I'm bringing a voice, as are you guys really, that there are alternative ways for the mortgage industry to move forward. And it's possibly going to come from people on the fringe now that didn't understand that things are changing in our industry, and there actually is other pathways in. I'm talking about Redwood Trust or like a Rhythm Capital, or just like these big investment firms, right? That typically came in through the channels that we know to sell correspondent and trickled all the way down to mortgage. They read our pieces and they understand that there might be ways to get into the industry in other ways. Like one of the things Adopt the Brand's talking to right now is 3 different companies that lead in eyeballs. Because I keep saying it, no one's listening. So I'm going out and finding large mobile apps that have a huge following, somewhere bridge touch mortgage, but don't actually have mortgage, because we have a lot of originators over there that would love the what do you call it, like the operational side of the business, the outsourcing. I forget the right name of it, but you could give them, if they know how to get eyeballs, they should just have a sort of mortgage in a box. And I don't want to be the company with, I want to be the company with the resources in the box. They should have NewZip at this point, right? And be able to check off that box and not have to wonder about it for 3 years on like what they're going to do about the fragmentation of where their real estate business is going to go. But their app users should have a streamlined solution to cover everything. Another people I'm talking to are people like with more than 300 call center plus a mailer solution for edge cases. So maybe they sell certain types of like renter's insurance or insurance for cars that are old enough the warranties go, or relocation companies. And they realize that their call center people could look at any credit box and get you opportunities. And I've seen them do it through things like, so they'll usually get into the market actually through like Nifty Door or a Figure, and realize that they can do it, but how could they do more? Could they be Rocket? And I'm doing it selfishly because then I can bring, I don't have to go fish for 16 different. I can bring in one person and then say, here's 16 solutions that I vowed. And you don't have, and I like my approach. Like you don't have to use all 16, but I'm going to show you how.
Check which ones you want. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like start with NewZip, right? I do believe you're the best. You can look at other ones, but I'm telling you, they're the best. So that's who you should be comparing things to, rather than just going blind and saying, looking at it as a category. Also telling them, but you do need this. So don't listen to somebody and get too.
Yeah, we hear those kind of things all the time, and I'm certainly the beneficiary of them occasionally too. But like, someone just signed up a real estate referral network several years ago and didn't know there were any others. Like that stuff happens every day. That's such a fragmented industry.
Especially the big opportunities. So my point is, the people that are reading mine, that are starting to reach out to me, besides the CFPB, the amount of people at the CFPB in the last, I think I'm up to 18 employees now have reached out.
Former employees.
So I don't know what comes of that, but I do love Washington, D.C. But there's like large VC companies that are in real estate that are connecting with me. Now they haven't, only some have sent me messages, just kind of touching on things, which is a new world for me. When I had easy mortgage apps, I'd be like, do they want to invest in my app? This is more, they're just feeling, they're probing, right? But they're not in because of the 3IA Atlas, in honor of that, they're probing, but they're not touching down yet. And I think, and they're watching you guys too. And I think eventually they're going to realize there's a new way into mortgage that they can help expand what lenders are doing today.
So what you want to talk about the article that you sent out regarding retention and LO retention? Because I think that was a pretty interesting article. Do you want to tackle that?
Sure. So I have to give a shout out. Like when we did the FHFA accelerator down in DC, a lot of the data was focused around, I want to pronounce it right, but Polygon, right? Polygon data. So they're looked at as a large company that analyzes data that's very respected, at least at the GSE level. And they pointed out, and you can help me, Rick, this is really your wheelhouse, that's why I brought it up, but they have pointed out the mortgage industry is missing the lack of quality of their companies as a brand in general, because they're not tracking turnover, and they came up with a ratio for it, right? So I'll give them a shout out. So in their HUM division, they're using the NMLS licensing data to calculate the number of loan officers and annualized average of the daily count of active MLOs by lender. And I think they went on with daily to try and offset companies that are using other LO licenses, or maybe like banks like where processors have to get licensed, but they're not really LOs, right?
Yeah.
And then the sum of all determinations through the year divided by the average annual tenure by a lender gives the MLO turnover rate per lender. The turnover rates over 100% are possible and could indicate a unidirectional downward employment change or a more choppy hiring termination environment. And the only company it mentions in it is actually New Res. That was over 100%.
I think that's a pretty wild cherry picking with the anomaly of them of dozens of their retail branches moving to another company. But yeah, that is interesting though. To see the ratio overall is interesting. With what was it, 32% roughly turnover every year for IMBs over the last, what's the period? 4 years, something like that. But basically, LOs would be more than 100% turned over within 3 to 4 years everywhere.
I wouldn't be surprised. The one thing that Redder does a good job is that, like, we have, I don't know, 500 loan officers or so, 600 loan officers at NFM, but only about 380 or 400 actually produce. So that sort of, they extract the license processor, the license loan or the license LOA. The license, a lot of owners are licensed because they have to carry the license for the company, but they don't originate.
Right.
So being able to sequester the producing LO versus those that are just licensed is an important metric. But turnover has been a big problem, and it's kind of having it 3 to 4 years is actually pretty good. I don't look at that as being I don't look at that as like massive turnover. I look at that as actually a pretty meaningful number, because it used to be a lot shorter. It used to be anywhere from 12 to 18 months, where people were just constantly trading up. That was 2013, 14, 15 timeframe. But it's really begun to stabilize. Now there's been a lot of consolidation of the business, so that ends up sort of.
Yeah, this has been a tough period to use this metric, right?
That's right.
How many of these lenders have laid off 500 LOs?
That's right.
It wasn't turnover. It wasn't if I owned the company, it wasn't bad turnover. It was turnover I implemented, right?
That's right.
And even just some of the really large examples skew it. Like Rocket's had to do some massive layoffs with these acquisitions of.
I mean, think about the number of people that have been laid off since 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, some companies laid off half their company.
So I would love
loan officers
to see if you could remove a couple extremes, what that number is. Companies that if you could remove companies that did major LO layoffs and maybe companies that exited retail in certain region, like companies that chose to do turnover versus companies that didn't, right? Basically would be the metric I'd want to see.
Rick, what happens in this LO turnover world? This LO let go world, because I'm not really familiar with too many opportunities. Say a branch gets let go from an IMB. Is there a portal where they go on and other people, because from what I've heard, there's no branches out there with no homes, even if they're not producing. Is that the case, or is there a land of misfit toys for these branches?
So I don't think you're asking the question clearly enough. So you're talking about
you guys are talking about mass loan officer layoff.
If there's an underperforming branch that a company that's cutting branches cuts, are they obviously going to find another home, or is that right? That's kind of what you're saying, Mike.
Yeah. Well, it just depends, right? When you ask yourself, there's really two questions. One is, what does underperforming really mean, right? Are they doing zero production? And then the other thing is, what's the reason for the underperformance? Because it could be the lender, and they could be successful somewhere else.
Yeah, and a lot of the strategic layoffs were of like consumer direct type loan officers, so that's a different game. But most of them found a home, I think, eventually too. All our partners are hiring consumer direct loan officers right now. Believe it or not.
Here's a good example. Like, so I'm just in Redder right now. There's 220,000 loan officers in the last 12 months that did a minimum of just one unit in the last 12 months, right? Just one unit. Now, if you got rid of Now that's pretty typical for like banks, So just because banks are banks, right? So if you took out any depository institutions, there's 131,000 loan officers in the non-depository space that did 1 unit or more, right? Now, it's almost impossible to be a full-time loan officer and only do 1 unit. You can't do 1 unit a year and be full-time, right?
Yeah.
So in order to be able to support yourself or have any meaningful income for a family, that if you're family dependent, if you're a full-time LO, let's say you really need to be doing 2 units a month, right? Because if you have 100 basis points in compensation and you do a $300,000 loan, that's $3,000. Okay, you do 2 of those units, you got $6,000 after taxes. You'll bring it home about $4,200. So the reality is, okay, you can start to kind of figure something out at some level, right? The problem is the number goes down from 130,000 LOs down to 40,000 LOs.
So now we're talking about a minimum of 24 loans a year.
24 loans a year. That's right. Because you're using what's my favorite data intelligence tool? Ingenious, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, when you're parsing this data and you're looking you're looking at, the total available market of really decent loan officers is 40,000 and below, right? Yeah. And you're looking at, if you go up to 3 units, I think it goes down to like 27,000. So the point is, it's a really small pie of loan officers, and the ones that are moving around are those between, the 71,000 and the 200,000 or that's where you start getting, or rather
in terms of their comp, right? Is that what you're saying? Is that the unit?
Yeah, because they'll move over because
like the 4 to 7 unit a month loan officers, something like that.
And that's been the strength to some degree of the broker world, right? Because if you get paid 200 basis points a deal, there isn't as much pressure to do more units, right? So the broker world kind of sits on two legs of the stool. One are the low performing LOs that are contributing because they get more of their money.
Yeah, they get 200 some bips. Yeah.
But the tech is becoming so good that now that there's a lot of top performing LOs that are moving out of the space, because not only are they getting good service and good technology, but now they're getting more of their comp. So it's becoming a bit problematic, and I think it's putting proper pressure on everybody to just deliver more value to sales agents that are actually driving the business.
Yeah. The article though is pointing out the world is changing, right? And it's just bad branding to have that much turnover. And if we were talking with Jeremy privately, but if we want to get out of the 30-year fixed mortgage, right, we're going to have to get a lot better at knowing our own products, our own inventory, whatever you want to call it, as salespeople. Yeah. And you are not getting that with turnover. And even if you are, you're not getting it consistently where the customer knows why this person doesn't know anything, this person does. I think that's what the article was really touching on.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to respond because it was Thanksgiving and so on and so forth. But what I was thinking about and that I want to talk about with Jeremy next time, or you guys now, was how different are the products? Can we really assume that an LO that moved from retail lender A to retail lender B is clueless about retail lender B's products? How different are they? Are they not? I don't know. How similar do you think they are? 90% similar?
Yeah, they're all the same. The problem isn't lender to lender. That's not the problem. The problem is that there's no investment in product education in your loan officers. Why?
Okay, but that's a different problem. That's
because
like
there is turnover.
That's like a junior LO's never getting trained problem, not like a jumping around problem, right?
Well, no, it's both. The reason why there's no investment why would I invest in Brock Cassidy as my LO if he's just going to pack up and leave in 18 months or 24 months,
yeah,
right?
That's fair.
So that's why, because of the turn, so you get this cyclical problem.
One begets the other. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's even why people say, why don't we educate people out of college? They prefer to educate loan officers than processors and build up that farm stable. But I'm sure there's a lot of fear of the investment required to do all that. And if you're just the breeder system for somebody to come in and offer more comp, it must just get frustrating enough where the companies that have tried it have have said it's just not worth.
Yeah, growing up if Jeremy was here, he would have even more to say probably. But growing up at Rocket in the industry was pretty wild. Every week there'd be, depending on the time of year, like between like 50 and like 150 new loan officers join per week, and they would maybe in the winter like 20, whatever. But like every week new loan officers joined, and often hundreds of new loan officers joined, and X% would decide not to be loan officers. Y% would take a long time to pass their exam and go into another role, but they would still have the opportunity to get a role. But I don't know, I got to think 60-70% got through it if I had to guess. And so effectively every week there was 10 to 50 new loan officers starting up. So that churn was built in. They were expecting the loan officer headcount was only growing slowly, like very slowly. Despite hiring a new group every week. And that was 2015, 2016, 2017. Rocket was in the process of becoming the number one lender. Like that was when I was there, when Jeremy was there, but it still was really eye-opening of like 90% of those people weren't originating 3 years later for Rocket, 4 years later for Rocket, probably 75% weren't originating 2 years later for Rocket, but they put them through, mortgage school basically. And so like, I always thought that was a cool investment to make. It was an aggressive investment to make. Tons of those people went everywhere else. Tons of those people never cut it, but it was cool to see just that type of investment. And I've seen a few other companies lately that are doing it again. I think it's like a pendulum swinging back to like certain companies are trying to hire out of college or whatever, out of other industries, put them through licensing and do the whole thing, which is encouraging. I think that's been one of the big concerns, I think, is that there's no new originators coming in. There's only an exit, not an entrance, right?
It's almost like they should come in through call center, and then it'd be hard to get them in through distributed retail, which goes back to this book.
Yeah, you'd be unprofitable for how long in distributed retail? Years. Yeah.
My chapter, and like I think basically I get pushback here all the time in the industry. So I kind of hate to be the one saying it. I don't think distributed retail is doing enough right now at the zip code level to win a zip code to where the loan officer cannot leave the company because they know who their competitor is in that zip code, and they're scared to death that competitor will take over that program, come to that company. And I think it starts with taking care of the entire podcast for them. If you gave them the mic'd up show for their area, they say they can do it themselves, but
you think as part of the package of joining a lender, they produce a podcast for you, basically?
I think you have to. I think you have to have the best mortgage podcast.
I don't think I totally caught that. That's what you were saying. Okay, that's interesting. I knew you were saying like encourage loan officers to do it and those things, but I wasn't thinking of it as like a company perk. Join us, and one of the things
it's easy to get on the microphone and talk mortgage if you're a loan officer. It's the little things that keep you like, how do I create a YouTube station?
I don't have a microphone, whatever. Yeah.
How do I do the thumbnail at 1600 times 1400 for my YouTube? How do I get into the Apple store? And then, and then when you're having bad days, just that motivation, don't forget you have another show. We want to get another show out there. And then you have to build the guests like we do. You have to find the accountant, but it's about the guests, not about the views. And I say it's going to take 9-12 months. But when that loan officer one day walks into the bakery and 3 people are talking about their show, it becomes bigger than mortgage. They don't want to lose that show. And they don't trust the other company to be able to produce it the same way, because that company's lying through their teeth. They're going to try and figure it out on their own real quick to get that production. But they don't have any, like we talked about, they don't have any references to show another podcast that they created. This is the first one, and they're only doing it to get your business. And so I think there's 42,000 opportunities, meaning one podcast for every zip code. That's just and then everything around it, like the outreach after, the snippets in advertising locally. If you just did it for one loan officer per zip code, where that loan officer wouldn't leave, it's part of that turnover problem. You got to.
So
There's
are you
really- what are mortgage companies doing?
brand going to productize that for lenders? Are you selling it to Rick?
I think it's. Yeah,
I've been offering it to some top 20 lenders, but again, I need to show proof.
You know, I think that to some degree, I think
someone needs to do it for them, right?
I think what you like, I think with your help, Mike, you know, there could be a very boutique mortgage banking approach where not all local businesses went out just because certain business verticals went national, right? It's just that those businesses at a local level need to really specialize, you know, in a very local niche, you know. And I call it sort of in our world, since our conversation a few nights ago, Michael, I think it becomes more of a boutique mortgage banking experience to kind of say, like, this is how we're going to compete differently than the national brands that are just going to commoditize you. This is how we're going to treat you in a very unique kind of way, because we do know the market and we're local, and there's things that we can do that are very local that you otherwise wouldn't get from a national lender whose headquarters is 2,000 miles away. So I've changed my tune a little bit. I think with someone like yourself to help people establish those sort of those local market niches, to create that boutique mortgage banking experience or mortgage experience, they just don't know how to do it. Or they need the help to do it.
And they're in real estate as well, right? I remember, so the number one, real estate agent in the country is my friend and occasional competitor and occasional partner, Jason Mitchell. And he built his business in Arizona doing a real estate radio show. Originally, he always credits that as like, I was the local real estate radio guy, and I had, and people called and talked to me, and that was how it started. And that was, not long before podcasting. He's been in the industry for a while, but not like this is an ancient take. This is like early days, probably 2005 or something like that. And he built it with a radio show. Now he's done all these other things, obviously, since then. But he always credits his initial leverage was being the Phoenix real estate radio guy. So I think that's a good proof point for what you're saying, Mike.
Yeah, and I'm sure you use the guest as clout, like, because it's not just the mortgage doing bad. The local accountant should be doing better right now. All these big companies are coming into all these industries, and these industries can still do better. They still have a large Rolodex. They still know people. You get them as guests. And if you read my chapter, I kind of give the only thing that is very difficult to put into place in my chapter is I do believe you should own a coffee shop as your office that has the podcast studio visible, so that you're really creating an experience and an omni-channel. But you could start with almost nothing and be better than most of these companies are offering.
I love that idea. I love just start a coffee shop, just kind of add. I love that idea a lot. I think it's a really smart idea.
Coffee's free with a mortgage check-in, or what are we talking?
Just you could train your baristas.
Yeah,
you could train your baristas just a little bit about mortgage, not so they talk about it, just so they can listen for opportunities and maybe know, right? And then I said you gotta have a glass podcast, so when people come in, they can see the podcast happening. It's a reason the accountant will want to be on it, the realtor will want to be on it. And all the TVs will show past podcasts. And then you can have your realtor start their own show using what I taught. The branch can now give that same package to the realtor, and they can they can sign up for the studio space. And people are meeting about homes anyways in coffee in the town. So why not? A little bit more to go. If there's any VC or anybody that franchises like the next Pete's Coffee, I think that's how we got to do it. So reach out. I know you guys are still watching. You've been waiting for that. So
I love it, dude. I love it. In starting a coffee shop wouldn't be, it's not a high barrier to entry to have coffee, donuts, pastries, whatever else. You're just creating a display for other people to bake their goods and sell them in your shop. And you're just serving coffee at this, in the process, and you're just taking a cut of all the above. So I love it. And the real main revenue driver of it is mortgage and in financial education. I actually saw there's actually what the heck, it's called the Water Bean that's in the Charlotte metro. And they actually have a conference room you could use as an executive suite almost. So people go in, they'll have coffee, and they'll meet clients, and they go into a breakout. And there's a conference table. They have like a conference like telecom, and they have like a TV, and it's all within the Waterbean experience. And it's such a great idea, you know.
Is that a coffee franchise, Waterbean?
Yeah, but I think it's a local thing. I think it's around here in North Carolina somewhere, you know. Well, there's one in Huntersville, and there's like 3 or 4 locations, but I don't think it's a national. But it's just such a good idea, you know. It's such a good idea.
Yeah, I think. And if you listen to Howard Schultz, you know, he never wanted it to be this way for Starbucks. He came over here, and he had the first experience like this, and he was originally selling the fascination of how many people just stopped by and started having their coffee in the shop and interacting in the community. There was nothing like that ever before. Coffee shops were never where you could sit inside of it. And so I kind of feel like it's the same thing. You need to get back to, I think I'm obsessed now that as many top 100 companies that I'm working with, if somebody starts today and starts just focusing on winning the community at the zip code level,
Yeah.
they'll either be acquired and then it will go back to the same landscape we are, or they'll start winning and they'll frustrate because most of these top lenders are still old guard thinking, and it's working for them. You'd have to really disrupt them for them to believe differently. And then that's something that it's got to be at the community level. Coffee is community.
Yeah. We have to do a follow-up show with the guy who has taken this approach on the real estate side again. I still know more people on the real estate side. Chris Davis, he's in Portland, Maine. He's one of my favorite follows on LinkedIn. We'll have to do a show with him. He produces a show called Places in Maine, where he goes and does really high, drones, like high quality cameras, whatever, to look at cool properties in Maine, like lobster boat houses, or someone who'll go out on a boat a lot.
Dude, that's awesome.
And and he's become, my understanding is one of the best real estate agents in Maine or in Portland, in southern Maine, which is the much higher end market. And he, but one of his big things he does is he lets any loan officer use his podcast studio. He paid all this money for all these cameras, and so he's gone the other way, building every loan officer relationship in Maine, by letting them use his stuff. So it's almost a version of what you're talking about, Mike, but executed differently. But we should definitely do a show with him soon on either or both of our shows, collaborative.
Love it. Well, good. Well, this is Real Fridays. We went a little long with Mike Kelleher. We love this. We love having Mike.
Yeah, it's Black Friday, so hopefully we helped a couple people watch on their way from kicking down doors to get TVs, and
we get way more residual, actually. Yeah, I mean, we get probably, I don't know, 3,000 to 5,000 views a week, but it's always a trailing effect, maybe seven days later, or whatever the case may be, of our shows. And I'd have to look at the actual duration of people's attention spans on them, but it's a few minutes here and there, but
so if anyone watches this later, the reason I'm in a barn in a flannel and hunting gear is because I'm in northern Maine
because you are in a barn
and hunting, and I'm actually doing that. Yeah. I love the outside view.
I love it, dude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I love it, dude. That's phenomenal.
But
are you a press style?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I love that. We gotta do a show up there.
Yeah, we were speaking right before this with the dog. Yeah.
Hey, did you guys see the here? I'm gonna show you that, guys, this, and I'll show this for the audience. I'm actually gonna do a post in this respect.
You guys should definitely get that Chris Davis guy.
Yeah. I'll introduce you to Mike.
I'm sharing my screen right now. Check this out. So I added all of Mike's conferences that you texted Mike last night.
Yeah. Shout out to Larry Bailey. I took it right off his post.
And so what I did is I've been adding a bunch, but look at all the mortgage conferences. So you guys have access to this document. I want you guys to update it. So some of the conferences aren't determined yet. Alabama and the Carolinas, New England's conference, I don't think it's scheduled yet.
It is. I'll get you breaking news.
All right.
Yeah, what is it?
That's what everyone's listening for. Breaking on New England next.
Breaking on New England.
What is it?
It's
September?
yeah, it's the same kind of weekend. It's like September with a teen in it. So let me see. I'll tell you which one makes sense. It's going to be in Newport again.
Oh, sweet.
It'll be September 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Perfect.
September 16th, 17th, and 18th. Okay.
Well, the September Rhode Island conference.
And so I'm going to be
that same Sheridan, that
I'm going to
Newport
be running
Sheridan.
that first day again. So we could actually do like a podcast up on stage or something during it.
Let's do it.
I think we should, and I'm sure we'll all be there. Well, I don't know if Jeremy will be there, but definitely Brock will be there, I'm sure.
Easy enough for me from Boston, that's for sure.
Yeah. So look at this list and identify which ones you're going to be attending. I misunderstood the text, Michael. I thought you actually said you were attending all those conferences. I was like, shit,
just keep it there. I'm going to be at a bunch this year.
So, but update this so we all know where one another are, and we can easily align on activities and efforts and that kind of thing. I'm still working out my speaking schedule at some of these conferences.
And anyone listening, hit us up in the comments to get the list.
Yeah, I got my my official invite to speak at the IMB conference for the MBA in February.
That's great.
So,
Oh, cool. I really like that conference. I'll be sure to be there.
February
yeah,
2nd.
no,
That one.
Sneaks into February.
yeah. So I mean, if you guys, so let's definitely collaborate around that if you can. If you have an issue trying to get access to the document, let me know and I'll revisit the permissions. But it's shocking, and we always know because I'm trying to get all the sales conferences in there too, sales mastery, anything and everything sales related. I want on there, everything mortgage related. I want on that document, so we can really take a look at conferences we should all be at.
Great.
So
Yeah. And the question is, are we wondering why vendors don't sponsor? That's what I always tell the board and why we try to work on new innovative ways. But look how many there are now. Like 15 years ago, I don't think there was this many conferences.
Once we refine the list, I want to do a post about the number of conferences and how that potentially is a problem all by itself, because it just illustrates how fractured the industry really is.
Sure.
So good. Well, good chatting with you guys.
Yes. Happy Friday. Thank you for letting me be a guest. This was fun. And I'll see you guys on the text.
No, and I appreciate everybody for logging in. And this is a wrap for Real Fridays here on November 28th. So talk to you soon.
Happy Black Friday.
Take care, guys.
Bye.